Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This video we're taking a look at the Leupold Mark 6 1:6x20 variable mag optic. A bit of a mea culpa for me. I've never really been a huge fan of variable magnification optics on what I'd consider a general purpose rifle, patrol rifle, intermediate range rifle, what have you. For precision rifles, I think it's definitely something that you want. But when it came to just your general purpose rifle, I'm a bigger fan of the red dot. Of course, there's some reasonings for that, just because, you know, when I first really started using a rifle professionally, the options for LVPOs, your low variable power optics, they weren't super great. Everything was still getting away from fixed power. You still, like, your Mark IV fixed 10 power was still the venerable, the pretty much the standard. So I came up on red dots, the M68 CCO 4 MOA dot. That's kind of where I started with the use of optics, and obviously the technology kind of exploded after the assault weapons ban expired, and the citizen market was more and more interested in the AR platform and just rifles in general, especially with the advancement in technology for rifles. So I still was really set on the idea of using a red dot non-magnified optic because they tended to be faster and they tended to be more reliable and more durable. The Kinsey's Optics guys, we were having this conversation. They said, well, if he checked out the Leupold Mark 6, and I was like, well, I've played with it a little bit, but I didn't really pay it due attention because my mind was still set on, if I was going to use an optic for an intermediate range rifle, for a patrol rifle or self-defense rifle, home defense rifle, I'm going to stick with my red dots because that's what I like. And they're like, well, get the Mark 6, check it out. So that's exactly what I did. And I can tell you right now that my opinion has been changed by this optic. So of course your first question is probably going to be, well, what makes the Mark 6 so great and why did it change your mind? The Mark 6 is a first focal plane variable mag, 1:6 magnification. It's first focal plane, so that 1x is an actual true 1x, whereas with your second focal planes, sometimes, in fact most of the time, the magnification on a second focal plane LVPO is going to be 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 or worse. Almost some of them they say 1, but when you actually read the fine print, it's closer to 2, which does create some accommodation issues when you shoot with both eyes open, as I would with the red dot, as I try to do with any optic. So that was definitely an issue. Another issue I had with some of the LVPOs was eye relief. Eye relief was a serious issue, but speaking specifically about first focal plane, where this optic really shines. Now, the Mark 6 isn't the only first focal plane 1:6, 1:8 on the market, but it's the one that I worked with, and it's the one that changed my mind. What's the difference, if you don't know, between first focal plane and second focal plane? Why is first focal plane beneficial in a low variable power optic? Well, first focal plane allows the reticle to remain, it remains the same size in relation to magnification. So if I'm on 1x, the reticle remains the same size. As I adjust my magnification to, for in this case, 6x, those subtension lines, that graduated reticle remains constant at each setting. It does not change size in relation to what you're looking at. So at any distance, if I was going to use my reticle for holds, or if I was going to use my reticle to estimate distance, I could do that. To the eye, the reticle appears small at 1 and full size at 6, speaking specifically about the Mark 6. The advantage to that is, on a 1x setting, the reticle doesn't act as a traditional subtension reticle or traditional graduated reticle. It acts as a red dot. Because this is an illuminated reticle and it uses the TMRD system, which kind of has similar to Leupold's fire dot, I turn it on, and instead of dealing with a large illuminated reticle like I would with a second focal plane reticle, I have a red dot. If I want to use a graduated, more precise reticle, I can go to 4 or I can go to 6 and then use the reticle in that way. With a second focal plane reticle, which is what most people are familiar with, the reticle remains the same size regardless of magnification. The issue with that is the reticle is always busy, it's always there, it's always in the way, if that's an opinion that you have. And it requires a specific magnification setting to actually estimate distance. So some examples are, you'll have a 2.5 to 12, where in order to use the reticle to actually estimate distance, you have to be on 8 or you have to be on 10. that could potentially be an issue if you forget what magnification setting you're on and then you're using your reticle to do a holdover shot or to estimate distance. With the first focal plane, that's never going to be an issue. Of course, another issue you can have with second focal plane optics is an aberration based on magnification for zero distance. So you can actually have a point of aim, point of impact shift based on what magnification setting you're using in relation to what setting you use to actually zero the rifle. It's not an issue you're going to have with the first focal plane optic. Getting into the specifications of the Mark 6, like I said, it's first focal plane, talked on length about that and why that's beneficial, and I'll get more into it. 34mm main tube. Weight is actually really reasonable. It's just over a pound, 17 ounces. The adjustment, your adjustment turrets, which you can get different turrets, but this particular model has 0.2 IMRAD or 0.2 mil, which is a little bit more precise or a little bit more beneficial than MOA because of the particular reticle I'm using, which is the TMRD, the Tactical Milling Reticle, which allows for a greater accuracy and less margin of error than you'd get from a traditional MOA dot system. There are different BDC reticles available, so if you wanted a 223 specific or a 308 specific reticle, that's something that you could get. Zero lock turrets, which are pretty cool. You zero it, lock it down. There's less chance for an inadvertent contact with gear to create a shift. Say you got a windage hold for the day or what have you, and you're moving around and messing with your gear, and it rubs up against something that moves that turret. And then you go to shoot and didn't realize that had occurred. With the zero lock, you can lock it down wherever it is. The eye relief is probably what sold me it on the most because I've got almost 4 inches of eye relief, which really allows you to use it more as a red dot, especially at that one magnification setting, than what you'd get with some traditional rifle scopes. I've had some 1:4s in the past where even when I snapped into the rifle, if my head wasn't just in the right sweet spot place, I'd get scope shadow on the top, or I'd have to move my head back to kind of open up the objective view. And that's always been an issue, and I think that's what, for the most part, really kept me away from using LVPOs until I found the Mark 6. That's all well and good, but what about the performance? What about the performance of the Mark 6? Well, True 1X, that's the setting I used it on the most during my evaluation, my review period, if you will. I spent a lot of time working in close because I wanted to see if that one power, that one magnification setting was going to slow me down versus a traditional red dot. I usually use an aim point, a T1 or a Trijicon MRO. Is it going to unduly slow me down? Well, I ran it side by side just to kind of get an evaluation, basically same setup. I'd run a drill using the Mark 6, and I'd run the same drill using one of my rifles with an MRO or a T1 on it. And at first, there was a slight measurable difference. I ran it on a shot timer, so I had an appreciable metric, and what I found was with the Mark 6 at first, I was running about 0.10 slower than I would run the same drill at the same distance on the red dot. That lasted for probably about, I'd say, 30-40 rounds, and then I was able to run the Mark 6 with no appreciable difference between the Mark 6 and a red dot. And since then, my times have remained constant when I do measure them, and I don't notice any issues whatsoever. So was that initial problem an issue with the optic, or was it an issue with my cognitive bias against LVPOs for use at close quarters? I don't really know. All I know is now it's not an issue. And the one advantage I definitely have now that I didn't have with the red dot is I can get PID, positive identification of my target, at extended ranges. It's really cool to have a red dot because they don't weigh much and they're really intuitive to use. Battery life is usually really, really long depending on which model you have. But the one thing they don't allow you to do is get positive identification as ranges extend or in lower lighting conditions or in twilight conditions where you've got multiple different types of light existing on the same focal point. So if I snap up to a target that's 100, 150 meters away, with a red dot, I know I can hit it. But should I be shooting at it is going to be the question. Mark 6, twist to 6, get a positive identification of my threat or my target, and I can go ahead and engage. That's something I just couldn't do with a red dot. So with the red dot, I needed ideal lighting conditions and ideal distance and focal plane conditions in order to get PID at those extended distances. Sometimes we get trapped in that range mentality where we just think about hitting steel as far away as we can hit it. But in a real life situation, the issue becomes, should I be shooting at that target at that distance? For a law enforcement military application, we need PID. And PID is not something you're going to be able to get as well or as easily with a red dot. Of course, you can get like a 3x magnifier, and I hear Aimpoint's got a 6x magnifier coming out, and that's great. But with the Mark 6, I don't have to worry about it. Twist to 6 or twist to 4 or twist to whatever magnification I actually need, PID is established. this is a safe shot to make, this is not a safe shot to make, I can move on from there. The biggest elephant in the room, especially when it comes to variable magnification optics, and you know, LVPOs are no different, is it going to maintain zero if it takes a fall, if it takes a spill? Well, the disclaimer, as always, anytime I do an optic review, I talk about this. If your rifle, you know, you lean it against the truck or the car or what have you, setting things up at the range, getting your bags out, and it just falls over, check your zero. If your rifle takes a significant hit, check your zero. If your rifle takes a really significant fall, check your zero, check your mounts, make sure everything's still tight, confirm zero. But in an emergency situation, you want to know, or you want to be able to trust that your optic is going to be able to maintain at zero if you don't have time to check your zero after something like that happens. So I like to keep things realistic, but instead of doing like 15, 20 just incidental, you know, have the rifle fall over on multiple terrains, I figured, you know, I'd just go back to just throwing it off the balcony. Now what you're looking at now is the 5-round control group I shot. After zero confirmed right before the drop test, I went ahead and shot a 5-round group under these conditions and then did the drop test. In case you didn't catch it the first time, the rifle hit and actually bounced. It was pretty impressive. This is my 5-round group after that fall. Shooting distance, as always, is zero distance. It was 100 meters. And as you can see, there wasn't a significant, if measurable at all, difference between prior to the fall, after the fall. That's a significant spill. Now, if my rifle took a fall like that, I would need to confirm my zero to make sure nothing happened. But that drop gave me a lot of confidence in the Mark 6, saying, hey, you know, this thing, it may be a variable magnification optic, but it just took a significant spill and it's still good to go. Again, for the last time, but I got to reiterate, if your rifle takes a spill like that, check your zero before you rely on it for home defense or you take it out on the road. Well, as a good friend of mine likes to say, not everything in life is burritos and strippers, my friend. There is a significant drawback to the Leupold Mark 6, and that is the cost. Now you really are getting what you pay for. However, it is going to be cost prohibitive for a lot of people. If your rifle is pretty much relegated to hobby shooting and home defense, this might not be the optic for you. But if you can afford it, get it. If you want a low variable power optic, this is one of the optics to have, definitely. I would hands down, anybody says, hey, I want to get a variable magnification optic, I want quality, I want the best thing there is. The Leupold Mark 6 is definitely going to be one of my first recommendations because it's just that good. Throughout the entire testing period, I used the rifle during practice, I used it for instruction, and it just became an intuitive part of my kit that I just don't know how I lived without it. I don't know how I was so ignorant to the fact that really good, high quality LVPOs existed, and I didn't know what I was missing just using red dots. Now, I'm not getting rid of red dots, absolutely not, because when it comes to like night vision, for example, I'm still going to be using my Trijicon, my MROs, but you can't really beat the benefits that the Mark 6 is going to give you over a lot of other optic systems, even other variable magnification optics, because that first focal plane and the reticle options they give in Leupold's always had really, really clean glass, and obviously they're super durable too. Their warranty and just their customer service, if you need it, which you may never need it, but if you do need it, they're going to take care of you. So somebody asked me, hey, should I get the Mark 6? Yes, absolutely. The only drawback, again, I'm able to find is it is going to be cost prohibitive, but you know, as with almost anything when it deals with firearms, you really do get what you pay for. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.